News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Make it a preset, y'all. 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. The ISIS-K attack in Moscow, 137 dead. And prior to this, ISIS-K also did a major terrorist attack in Iran at the commemoration, the annual memorial of the deposed former head of the elite Revolutionary Republican Guard group in Iran, and also the head of their intelligence, Qasem Soleimani. Trump blew him up. And so since then, ISIS-K went to their memorial and blew it up and killed, I think, 80 in Iran in January. No one should doubt, the Wall Street Journal editorial board says today, that the jihadists are looking to target Americans sooner or later. ISIS-K has revived itself, the Journal said. I'm going to give you more details in a minute, but my questions for you, after seeing the terror attack in Russia, and, of course, what I just shared with you earlier, the U.S. Border Patrol chief saying that it's a national security threat, the 140,000 illegals who have flooded us that are known gotaways, detected known gotaways. That's what keeps him up at night. 800-288-WBAP. After seeing these terror attacks in Russia, how likely do you think one of these types of attacks are to happen here in America, especially with Joe Biden's wide open borders? Robert in Fort Worth, you're on News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey, Robert.
Hey there. How you doing, Chris?
Good. How are you?
You know, along those lines of the terror attack, what would it take for Biden to be able to call a martial law? Couldn't he cancel an election with that?
I would hope not. I don't know the answer to that legally, but it would also depend on what the nature of an attack would be and such. But I mean,
he shouldn't seem to be worried about votes. I mean, every day something insane, he does something else that's insane, something that would not seem to be indicative of a guy that's about to run for office. So it just makes me wonder if he's even worried about an election.
I see.
I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know either, but I wouldn't put anything, like absolutely nothing, above that, any choices that you've mentioned, because these guys are performing horribly right now in the polling. Joe Biden is, and Donald Trump is looking strong for November as of right now. Things can change in a week or two or four, but I think they've got a lot of stuff planned that they have not.
Trump should be looking stellar. I mean, he shouldn't even have to campaign with what Biden's done to our country. I mean, that's what I don't understand.
Well, because you have to take off the Trump goggles that you and I have on, and see what the people who aren't sure who they're going to vote for are seeing.
NBC.
Huh?
They watch NBC. They don't watch Fox News.
I don't know if they watch anything. I can't answer that. The one thing I can tell you is that the fact that Fox News is wildly successful in its numbers and its ratings compared to, poor fake news CNN can't even break. Last number I saw was 583,000 is their biggest audience, which is abysmal. Yeah, and then fake news MSNBC even does better a lot of the time than them. But the point being is a lot of people are tuning into Fox, and that's a good thing. As far as sharing the perspectives that are closer to us. Now, as far as that, we got to be careful. I'm reminded of how that I love the story I love to tell. I've told for several years on and off on this show. A friend, he actually wasn't a friend. He was a guy that went to church with me at my old church. This is a long time ago, actually, when Obama was in office running for a second term, and he brought it up, and he was angry that I wasn't agreeing with him that it was an easy loss for Obama. It was going to be easy for us to win. And he got mad. He was frustrated. I'm like, first of all, we were not even we were at a church thing, which was starting to really get me. Like, dude, I didn't say this to him. I want to say, shut up. We're here for something else. You know what I mean? I really did. But he was so freaking blind. He was convinced that Obama was going to lose the second term, and I told him, no, it's not going to happen. I said, you got to take off your goggles, man. You got to see what they see that we don't see. And he couldn't do that. So I think the more we do that right now and next month and 3 months from now, the more likely we can be to make sure that this man that's in office stays in office. So we can't underestimate them.
There will be a terrorist attack. I can almost guarantee it.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry, what?
I said that there will definitely be a terrorist attack. I would bet money on it. And
before
we would do to them what the Russians did to theirs. I think I totally approve of that.
I tell you what, yeah, we talked about that earlier last hour, and I mean, one of the guy's eyes coming out of his socket. That one guy, his ear was cut off, and he apparently was forced to eat it. I mean, this is freaking crazy. But everything I saw, I'm like, good for them. You can't
see the bodies of the people that they killed because I imagine it was 10 times as bad.
Well, you can see the attack. I have many videos and pictures that were being released on social media that night and the next day on my Twitter feed for people's perusing if they want. Okay, so that question I've been asking, it sounds like you've answered it, but after seeing the terrorist attack in Russia, how likely do you think one of these types of attacks are to happen, especially with Joe Biden's wide open borders? You said what again? You said very, very much so, you think?
100%.
Okay. Well,
it's just a matter of when.
Yeah, and it'll be Biden. I'll give you my theory in a second. Thanks for your call, Robert. Look forward to your next one. 800-288-WBAP is our number. 800-288-9227. It all started with the Border Patrol chief saying something over the weekend that was pretty shocking to most of us because he works for Joe Biden. He works at the pleasure of Joe Biden and at the pleasure of Alejandro Mayorkas, and he told the truth. He said what two previous Border Patrol chiefs didn't say till after they retired because they knew retaliation was going to be coming if they did. He said, quote, what keeps him up at night is the known gotaways. That number, since the beginning of the fiscal year, October 1st, 140,000 known gotaways. Like you could see, we detected them, but we didn't stop them because we were too busy taking care of Joe's illegals and this illegal invasion. To actually stop bad guys. He says that number is a large number. What keeps me up at nights is those 140,000 known gotaways. And that's it. By the way, and most of us have said this, and I've said it for a while, that there's going to be a major terrorist attack in the United States, and it's going to be a lot bigger and better than 9/11. And I think they're going to take out more than 3,000 of us this time. Could be with a dirty bomb. Could be with a bio or chem weapon. I asked a former DHS guy who's an expert at biochem and nuclear. I said to him on this show, I said, can a terrorist coming over the border fit a nuclear spent nuclear material to make a dirty bomb? Can they carry that spent nuclear material, the radioactive material, in a backpack as they cross the border? Illegally. Yes. He said, yes, that'll fit in the backpack. How about the anthrax, ricin, or some serious chem, bio stuff? Chem, yes, he said. Bio, yes. So I'll be shocked if they haven't already. I honestly believe they've already come over our border with one or all those, and they're going to unleash them. And I think one of our previous callers was right when he said we're going to see multiple fronts throughout the day, like we saw in a Russia-style attack, but it'll be in several cities. 2 or 3 or 4 cities that are already here. They were led in by Joe 3 years ago, and they're allowed to operate at will. And interestingly enough, though, they might want to wait till after Biden's reelected if he is, but they don't want to do it during Orange Man, I think. So I think it'll be interesting to see if they do it before Joe, before the election in November or after it. I hate to talk about this like this, but it's going to happen. And when it happens, the first thing you're going to think about is Croc told me about this. And he's been saying it for a year, and here it is. And then you're going to see everybody in the media act all surprised, shocked, horrified, and they're not going to blame Biden. They're going to blame Trump somehow and the environment or something like that. They're not going to admit to anything when this happens of their fault, and they're not going to pretend. They're not going to allow the ability that these illegals came over during Joe Biden's tenure to be exposed. The media will not allow it. It's always Orange Man's fault. And we're going to get into the decisions that have come out today in Orange Man's favor. And I like that, by the way. I like that very much. And there's a lot going on this show tonight, and in the world. All that's coming up next. But right now, I want to tell you that next is Israel. This is some bad stuff's going on with the United States and Israel right now. Bad. And what that is Israel today canceled their Washington visit. that Bibi Netanyahu, or at least his top delegates, were going to come here. That after the U.S. just today allowed the UN to pass a resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire. They don't want the United States under Joe Biden because of people who love, who hate the Jews in Michigan, and who many of whom also, well, not all of them, but most of them probably hate the Jews. And same thing with Minnesota. There are too many people that are so angry at Joe Biden and at Israel for what they've done to terrorists that they will not vote for Joe, as you all know. So here's the deal. Joe is selling out Israel, a country he claims to love, and allowing it to fall and allowing Hamas to stay alive in Rafah with 4 brigades left, 4 out of 24 brigades left, and its top leaders, 2 of its top 3 leaders in Gaza to stay alive so they can reconstitute and kill more Jews and rape more Jews so that Joe Biden can get reelected in the fall. That's what's going on. I'll give you the details on that next. We'll take calls from you. All that next on the Chris Crock Show on News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Make it a preset. 800-288-WBAP is our number. That's 800-288-9227. Okay, really, I saw some real sad news today. It grabbed me and it surprised me, and we're going to talk about it right now because it's important. Israel was, as you know, with the horrific terror attack on it on October 7th, today, while 4 of Hamas's 24 brigades remain standing, while 2 of its top 3 in country, if you will, Hamas leaders, one of them being Yahya Sinwar, the guy who was the chief of all of this, are still alive and are kicking. And according to Israeli intelligence and reports, they're believed to still be in Rafah or south of Rafah at the border with Egypt, where you've got possibly as many as 1 million Gazans gathering and clustered because they're afraid and they don't want to be involved in the war, and Israel's pushed them down at the south. So right now, Joe Biden, because he's getting his you-know-what handed to him on a silver platter by the Muslims in America, particularly the Muslims in Michigan, a swing state that he must win in the Rust Belt, and Minnesota. Now, look, that one's not necessarily up for grabs, but it doesn't look good with the huge Muslim population in metro Minneapolis, St. Paul. So, today, in the run-up to all this, Joe Biden demanding a ceasefire, telling Israel for a ceasefire. Bibi Netanyahu, the prime minister, coming out and saying, we're not stopping. We're going to finish the job. We're going to kill the terrorists that killed and raped us and that are holding around 100 of our hostages still. Do you understand something? 5 United States citizens are still in custody by the Hamas terrorists. 5 of our people. Have you heard Joe Biden say one thing? Have you heard Biden say one thing about the Americans who are currently still being held hostage? Have you heard anybody in his administration say anything about the 5 Americans still in custody out of the 100 hostages? And do you know that if they're female, according to the UN of all people, they are being systematically raped and sexually tortured and raped while they're in custody right now? Okay? And if they're elderly, I would not put them against them to also be doing that to them too. So, with this, Joe Biden is demanding they stop. And with this today at the United Nations, a shocking thing really was that the United Nations decided to abstain and not veto a UN ceasefire resolution. Today, the United Nations passed a resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. Let Hamas stay. Let them win. Let them have 4 brigades and 2 out of 3 of its top leaders there stay so they can kill and rape more Jews. And U.S. said, no comment. And we have veto power. We didn't veto it. This is a sad, sad, sad and scary day in our country and in the world. When Joe Biden's political chances is more important, his political gain is more important than Jews. And you have to understand something. It's not just in Israel's interest. It is in our interest. I was listening to a great interview over the weekend on the Great Ones show, Saturday and Sunday on Fox News. And I can't remember which one he had on. It was one of the top people, I think, in the Trump administration with its national security and such. But we need Israel, too, because we cannot, it's in our interest to be able to defend and keep that part of the world peaceful. And even if it wasn't the Jewish people, if it was an Arab ally, we would need them. We need them just as much as they need themselves to be alive and exist. And Joe is selling that out right now for his political career. My question is, if you were Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu right now, would you still go into Rafah and finish the Hamas terrorists and free as many hostages as you could? And do you have any faith in Hamas handing over the remaining Israeli and U.S. hostages? 800-288-9227 is our number, 800-288-WBAP. I want to hear from you right now. Chime in. If you were Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, would you still go into Rafah and finish the Hamas terrorists and free as many hostages as you could, even though the world, through the UN, is now condemning you and saying stop? Would you still go in? I would. I mean, this is the future of this is the time to finish the job right now. This is not time to stop. And do you know that Canada has stopped providing any ammunition and weapons to them right now? We're next. I'm telling you, they're alone on an island. God's people, that state is God's people, and they are alone on a freaking island, man. And I want them to finish the job. I'm disgusted in our country under Joe Biden. I'm disgusted and ashamed. 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. And also, do you have any faith in Hamas handing over the remaining Israeli and U.S. hostages? Or do you agree with me that we need to go in and kill them all and free those hostages on our own, like Israelis have done? 800-288-WBAP, 800-288-9227. Coming up next on the Chris Crock Show, I'm going to be sharing with you, of all people, something that John Fetterman, believe it or not, the Democrat senator from Pennsylvania, who's now starting to be able to talk normal and think normally, is what he says is going to probably surprise you in a good way about what's going on in Rafah and the invasion. That's next on the Chris Crock Show on News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Make that a preset. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing where we're at now? Vice President Kamala Harris, clear warning to Israel's Netanyahu, a major Rafah operation would be a huge mistake and is not ruling out consequences. Did you ever think we would be here at a place like this? Think about what's happening. Joe Biden sees tremendous consequences for supporting Israel, in that a sliver of our population, and I mean that, I'm not trying to be rude to the Muslim community, but it's a sliver of our population. I think the Muslim population is 1% of America, maybe even a little bit less, something like that. And I think the Jewish population, I think, is 2%, if that. And those are estimates and guesses. I can't remember, but I've read I think it's about 1% Muslim, maybe 1.5% Jewish, something to that effect in our country. Maybe 2%. But I know we have more Jews in America than Muslims, but it doesn't matter. Every person matters that's a civilian in this a citizen in this country. But what does matter is that our most staunchest ally and the Jewish people are now being sold out to appease terrorists. Terrorist supporters, terrorist sympathizers, and people who just care so much about this they're willing to not vote for their choice, if you will. The terrorists I speak of are not every Muslim person. I'm talking about the people in Gaza who, I don't know if you know this, I thank my New York Times bestseller friend and author and journalist who told us that on the show, Joel C. Rosenberg. He told me about a poll I had missed. It was Reuters, and they're like the Associated Press. They did a poll in Gaza, and 70% of every person that's a member of Gaza, I think it was 72%, all said after the Hamas terror attack on Israel, raping them, beheading them, torturing them, kidnapping them, I think it was 72% said that they support Hamas. They want the Jews to be raped. They want the Jews to be eliminated off the face of this earth. That's why they voted for Hamas as their government, who puts in its charter, their government puts in its charter the elimination of the state of Israel. And they practice from the river to the sea, which means kill every Jew and eliminate Israel from the river to the sea. So today, Joe Biden put forth on the UN a resolution. He voted. Actually, he didn't put it forth. He voted no comment. Basically, he voted present. He didn't vote to condemn or veto this new resolution that went through today that condemns Israel and calls for an immediate ceasefire. So, my question for you is, as Kamala, you just heard over the weekend in an interview with ABC, literally says, if Israel continues and goes into Rafah and kills those last 4 brigades of Hamas and kills those last 2 top terrorist leaders of Hamas, Yahya Sinwar and the other guy, if they do this, there will be consequences for them. And meanwhile, there are 5 Americans who are being held hostage, and there are 134 hostages left. So if you were Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu right now, would you still go into Rafah and finish the Hamas terrorists and free as many hostages as you could? And do you have any faith in Hamas handing over the remaining Israeli and U.S. hostages? 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. Chime in right now. Let me know what you think on this. If you were Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, would you still finish the job and go into Rafah and deal with the consequences? Let me tell you this. The Israeli Prime Minister said clearly over the weekend again and last week that he's going to finish this job. His main political nemesis has been made with Bibi Netanyahu's blessing, has been made a member of the war cabinet, and his political nemesis stands with him in finishing the job. The Israeli civilians, writ large, stand with Bibi and want to finish this job. Could you imagine when we were in Mosul, wiping out ISIS, finishing the job? Could you imagine us saying, you know what? Some people that are in the UN don't like what we're doing in wiping out ISIS. We're gonna withdraw and let ISIS win this one. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine after 9/11, when we went into Afghanistan to capture and or kill the terrorists who did what they did to us on 9/11? Could you imagine us, 3/4 of the way through, the world condemning us and saying stop it, and us saying, okay, we're gonna withdraw from Afghanistan, and let Osama bin Laden and a quarter of the terrorists that did this, that are responsible for it, we're gonna let them stand. We'll live to fight another day. Would you ever accept that as an answer if it was you, as an American? And it's amazing. You don't hear Joe Biden and Kamala, cackling Kamala. You don't hear them demanding the hostages be freed right now. You don't hear them saying anything about 5 Americans who are hostages right now. You hear nothing but disapproval of Israel. We are in a bad, bad place right now. Boy, John Fetterman, of all people, impressing me. He said about this, he rejects Kamala's statement over the weekend that there's going to be some punishment for Israel, some hard consequences if they don't stop finishing the job here. If they stop finishing the job and just if they don't stop and withdraw, if you will, at least from that point in Rafah, not go in, let the terrorists win. Fetterman said, quote, on Twitter, in reaction to this, he said that it's a hard disagree, quote, he said, not just disagreeing, but a hard disagreeing. Israel has the right to prosecute Hamas to surrender or to be eliminated. Hamas owns every innocent death for their cowardice, hiding behind Palestinian lives. So what you have right now is a United States President, Joe Biden, willing to let Israel leave 134 hostages in custody, including 5 U.S. in custody, and not go into Rafah so that he can win in the fall and look like he's done something victorious to help the Muslim community vote for him. So you have about 100 to 150,000 votes in Detroit and tens of thousands, if not 100,000 plus votes in Minnesota, that he's willing to sell out the Israeli people and the Jewish state and let the terrorists win so that he can win in November. So that really is it. The terrorists win and Joe Biden wins. That's kind of what he's saying. That's where we're at, guys. 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. Coming up next, there's so many big stories of the day. Donald J. Trump at New York court getting a message from the appellate court today, and it was a very good one, that the bond has been lowered to about 1/3 of what it was, or less, maybe even a quarter. I'll share that with you next, and plus we're talking about Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and finishing the job, and I pray that he does, and most of us are actually with him, and I pray he knows that. But I know that all the Israeli citizens are with him. That's coming up next on the Chris Crock Show on News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Make it a preset. In moments, we're going to get to the announcement today that Donald Trump's bond was lowered to $100 and some million, and he will be paying that. It's also, I think he has a couple weeks to pay that. We'll get to all that coming up in a moment. But first, talking about Israel, they also didn't mention you yet, I believe, that Israel has canceled their visit to Washington, D.C. after the U.S. abstained today on a UN ceasefire resolution. Good. The relationship between the United States and its supposed strongest partner, strongest ally, Israel, is now very strained. They won't even show up and say hi to us as they were scheduled to do. And I agree. And I think they should flip the bird to Joe on camera. Here you go, Joe. This is what we think of you. Go, go, go. Finish the job. Kill Hamas. Screw Joe Biden. They're going to have consequences now, they're saying, possibly for Israel. They're going to punish Israel and not Hamas, the terrorists, and Iran. He's given Iran $8 billion to kill Jews. He funded the October 7th attack. That's not equivocal. That's unequivocal. By allowing them to make tons of money off of their oil. Our number is 800-288-WBAP, 800-288-9227. Chris in Fort Worth, you're on News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Good, sir. How are you?
I was doing great till I tuned you in, man. You got me all revved up. I just want to know where our people are, Chris. Where are our congressmen? Where are our senators? Why aren't they screaming and hollering? Why aren't they representing us? Why aren't they taking care of one of our greatest allies? Why?
I don't know why the Republicans aren't going nuts over this. I haven't seen or heard much from them yet that I'm aware of. I may have missed something. But I know why the Democrats aren't saying a word. I mean, Chuck Schumer, the most powerful Jew in the United States Congress, the most powerful Jew in American politics, I think, ever. Highest ever ranking Jewish leader, and he sold out his own religion, his own faith, his own people, if you will. I know he's an American citizen, but it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Well, they always have, so there's nothing new on that. It's just he's made it real obvious.
Yes.
And made it real apparent.
Correct.
But you know, where are people standing up and saying, what in the hell is the matter with you people? These are our allies. Where is our representatives? That's all I want to know. Where are they?
So, sorry, go ahead. Well, to me, this comes back to, biblical times. Look at it. I mean, Israel has always been persecuted. Israel has always
correct.
been attacked. Israel has always, well, not always, but for in history, been the one who's left out there alone. They've stood alone so many times, been surrounded by so many enemies, and here we are today, and we're seeing the unthinkable. Our country bailing on them. This is terrifying to me. A world.
It's scary because what's the next move?
Well, we know
We're
that.
going to invite Iran over to be our pals.
Say it again. What? Yeah.
We're going to invite Iran over to be our pals.
Well, I mean, look at what we got going on here. We have China. I don't know if you caught this the other day. I mentioned this on my show that China had their diplomats go and meet with their foreign service secretary. He went over to Qatar and met with the billionaires who run Hamas, the 3 top billionaires who run Hamas, from a five-star luxury at the Qatar, the Qatari hotel. And he said they had a productive meeting and it was good. China is on the ground, meeting with them, is in on this. They support Hamas. They support Iran. This is the axis of evil. We are seeing the world, I hate to say the word collapse, but we're seeing, because that's not really accurate necessarily, but we're seeing the United States influence and United States dominance collapse all over the world. In Russia and Ukraine, in Afghanistan, and in the Middle East writ large, with what's going on with Iran and Hamas and Israel, we're seeing the world change in 3.5 years under Joe Biden, and it's not a good look. And now, keeping up with a man who's been running this country for 3.5 years, who former Secretary of Defense Bob Gates, who was the SecDef under Hussein Obama and under George W. Bush, who said about 8 years ago, I think, that Joe Biden's been wrong on every single international decision or foreign policy decision since forever, on everything. He's been wrong on every single foreign policy decision. He's like, I like him, but he's wrong on everything, literally everything. And now we've seen another 10 years. That was 40 years. So now it's 50 years. Every single thing this man has decided or supported in foreign policy is wrong. And we saw a tremendous victory for ISIS-K in Afghanistan. They have reconstituted. They're now committing multiple spectacular acts of terrorism. First, in blowing up 80 people at the Qasem Soleimani Memorial Service in Iran. And that was wildly successful for ISIS-K. And then just now pulling off a massive terror attack in Russia at that concert hall in Crocus with 137 dead. They are reconstituted, they're kicking ass, and the Taliban is not challenging them and is not taking them out. They've either decided to be lazy or live with them, or they are afraid of them, or they're allies with them. They're back, and Joe released thousands of ISIS-K and Al-Qaeda terrorists who were in Bagram Air Force Base overnight when he abandoned the jails. We pulled out with no planning, no nothing, and one of the ISIS terrorists that was freed within 3 days blew up Abbey Gate and killed our 13 soldiers and maimed and severely wounded 38 other soldiers. So this is his policy decision. And now, to cover up for all of his policy decisions, Hamas launched its war because of Joe Biden being in office, because of Afghanistan, because of his fecklessness, and they were funded by Iran, who Joe Biden funded. And now, because of what's going on there with the Jews and the attack that Joe Biden allowed to happen on his watch because of his fecklessness and his international policies, now his international policies that got him into that situation is now getting him to sell out Israel and allow them to not let them finish the job and attack them and cause consequences on them, so he could win the Arab vote, in the Muslim vote in Michigan, Minnesota, and other places. The man has to continue to make horrible and horrific decisions that hurt us all in order for him to stay in office. 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. Next, we're going to get to Trump, a big victory today, and a big announcement for his social media, True Social, that starts tomorrow. We have some big stuff to talk to you about that I'm excited about. Next on the Chris Crock Show on News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM 93.3.